Welcome back to the latest edition of the Paddock Pack Down. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not in the Formula 1 paddock, but it was a very, very busy weekend in Saudi Arabia. Lots and lots of storylines coming out of a turbulent weekend in places for Formula 1. But the race on Sunday really delivered. We saw the latest edition of this brilliant fight between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc that looks like it's going to rage right the way on through this season and maybe make one of F1's great new rivalries. Who knows? It's a really exciting way to start the year. And it all boiled down to a really close battle between the two drivers, entering those final few laps in Saudi Arabia. In this video, we're going to take a look at how Max Verstappen used some cheeky and clever DRS tactics to beat Leclerc to that victory and give Red Bull its first win of the 2022 season. Now, of course, it was Max Verstappen's teammate, Sergio Perez, who started the race from pole position, and he really controlled the opening stages. It did look like at one point he might convert that first career pole after 215 race starts into a race win for Red Bull. But in the end, it wasn't to be. That safety car period caused by Nicholas Latifi's crash, another one, that really did turn things against Perez, but it did set things up for that great fight between Verstappen and Leclerc as the race entered its final stages. Leclerc had been able to keep Verstappen a couple of seconds behind for much of the race, but the virtual safety car period, that pulled things together, allowed Verstappen to get quite close again and go on that final charge with 10 laps to go. It tended to be that Leclerc, while he was quicker through sector 1, Verstappen would then pull it back through sector 2, meaning he had DRS as they went into that final straight line all the way through to turn 27, and then out of the final corner onto the main straight. It was on lap 42 when Verstappen had his first attempt at passing Leclerc for the lead into the final corner using DRS. But Leclerc played it very, very wisely here. He hung it wide at the final corner, meaning Verstappen had a tighter line, and it also meant Leclerc got DRS back as they went down the main straight. This meant the Ferrari driver could repass Verstappen as they went into turn 1 and take the lead back. It was similar in Bahrain, when Leclerc never went into 8th gear into turn 1, meaning Verstappen was always exposed as they went up the hill to turn 4, and Leclerc would get DRS back. So Verstappen had to learn from this defeat, meaning he had to make sure that he wasn't exposed to Leclerc using DRS back on him as they went down the main straight, lap after lap, or it could end up in a similar defeat. We saw these tactics really play out at the end of lap 43. Both drivers were slamming on the brakes as they went into the final corner, trying to make sure they were the one behind and that they got DRS as they went down the main straight. It was a similar thing we saw in Bahrain, of course, in that fight between Leclerc and Verstappen as they went in out of turn 1 and then up the hill back up to turn 4. And you've got to think, have Verstappen learned the lessons from that defeat, knowing he has to really time it right for when he got DRS to make his move and take the lead. Leclerc managed to retain his advantage and pull away a little bit, but then a mistake on lap 45 hit the back end of the car stepping out a little bit at the final corner and too much wheel spin. It meant Verstappen could close up again and use DRS on lap 46, but he was really, really clever about it this time, deliberately holding back so he didn't go ahead into the final corner. It meant Leclerc was exposed, and with Verstappen right behind him as they went down the main straight, the Red Bull driver got the move done into turn 1 to take the lead, and from there he never really looked back. Leclerc's rear tyres were really struggling throughout this period, and although he was able to close up in the final few stages, we then saw the late yellow flags for the clash between Alex Albon and Lance Stroll. That meant Leclerc didn't stand a chance to get another move done into turn 1, giving Verstappen the victory and Red Bull their first win of the 2022 season. But after the race, pretty much everyone was saying this actually showed the benefits of DRS and how good it can be at times. Charles Leclerc, he said that F1 would actually be quite boring without DRS, which I think this race did prove. And even Max Verstappen, he admitted that without DRS, he wouldn't have got close enough to try and overtake Leclerc and have those great passes. So in this case, DRS appeared to be quite good for Formula 1. It's not something that everybody likes, and the purists will obviously hate it, but actually it does deliver some pretty good racing at points and avoids some quite processional races, particularly at a street circuit like the Jeddah Corniche track. And next up, of course, we have Melbourne, which is a track traditionally through the years that has been terrible for overtaking and given us some quite boring races. There are some track changes that have happened for this year's race, and it'll be really good to get back there 2 years after the start of the pandemic when the race fell apart on the eve of the 2020 season. The DRS, I think, there, again, could actually be really useful, and it'll be another good test for just how good these cars are in 2022 when they race wheel to wheel, and if the regulations are continuing to do the job they set out to do. But the early signs are that the 2022 regulation changes have had a good effect for this year. We've seen some really good battles already this year, and Verstappen and Leclerc appear to be warming up for one of F1's newest rivalries. It could be really exciting, particularly if this fight goes all the way on through the season. So what do you think about DRS? Is it actually a good thing for F1? Has this race proven why DRS can be so useful? Or is it still something that we should get rid of completely and return to pure racing in F1? That's it for the latest edition of the Paddock Packdown. We will be back in the paddock in Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and also make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we'll have lots of more videos coming in the next couple of weeks ahead of the next race.